The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. Characters, Summary, Analysis. Hello and welcome to the discourse. The Bell Jar is Sylvia Plath's semi-autobiographical novel published in 1963 under the pseudonym Victoria Lucas. It follows Esther Greenwood, a bright and ambitious college student whose descent into mental illness mirrors Plath's own struggles with depression and suicidal ideation. The novel is set in the 1950s and critiques the restrictive gender roles of the era, exploring themes of identity, societal pressure, and the suffocating effects of mental illness. Plath's only novel was published just weeks before her suicide, adding a haunting layer to its reception. Though initially controversial, it has since become a seminal work in feminist literature and a powerful portrayal of psychological collapse. One of the central themes of the Bell Jar is mental illness, depicted through Esther's increasing detachment from reality and her sense of being trapped under a bell jar, an invisible, airless enclosure that distorts her view of the world. The novel also examines the societal expectations placed on women in the 1950s, as Esther grapples with the limited choices available to her, marriage and domesticity, or a career and independence. Another key theme is identity, as Esther struggles to define herself outside of others' expectations. The motif of death and rebirth recurs throughout the novel, reflecting both Esther's suicidal thoughts and her tentative steps toward recovery. Plath's exploration of these themes is deeply personal, lending the novel an intense confessional quality. Esther Greenwood serves as the novel's first-person narrator, offering a voice that is sharp, introspective, and laced with dark humor. Her observations about the world around her, whether critiquing the superficiality of New York's fashion scene or the oppressive nature of psychiatric treatments, reveal her intelligence and disillusionment. Plath's prose is vivid and poetic, blending realism with surreal imagery to convey Esther's psychological unraveling. The novel's structure mirrors Esther's mental state, with fragmented memories and a non-linear progression that mimics the instability of depression. This stylistic choice immerses the reader in Esther's perspective, making her suffering all the more palpable. Characters of the Bell Jar. Esther Greenwood, the novel's protagonist and narrator, is a bright but deeply conflicted young woman on the brink of adulthood. As a scholarship student at a prestigious women's college, she secures a summer internship at Ladies' Day magazine in New York City. Yet, instead of feeling triumphant, she is paralyzed by indecision about her future, torn between societal expectations of marriage and her own desire for independence. Her interactions with other characters highlight her inner turmoil. Doreen, a fellow intern, embodies a bold, sexually liberated femininity that both fascinates and intimidates Esther. At the same time, Betsy, the wholesome Pollyanna cowgirl, represents the conventional femininity Esther rejects but cannot fully escape. Esther's relationships with men further complicate her sense of self. Buddy Willard, her former boyfriend, symbolizes the oppressive male dominance she resents. His condescension and assumptions about women's role fuels her rebellion. In contrast, Constantine, a prospective UN interpreter, offers a fleeting glimpse of a different kind of masculinity, though their encounter leaves her unfulfilled. Later, her impulsive decision to lose her virginity to Irwin, a detached Harvard professor, ends in a medical emergency, reinforcing her isolation. Family figures loom large in Esther's unraveling. Her mother, Mrs. Greenwood, is a well-meaning but emotionally distant widow whose pragmatic advice, learned shorthand, clashes with Esther's artistic aspirations. Her inability to understand Esther's depression deepens their rift. Philomena Guinea, Esther's wealthy benefactor, becomes an unlikely savior, funding her treatment at a private mental institution after her suicide attempt, a gesture that underscores the role of privilege in recovery. Within the psychiatric system, Esther encounters both incompetence and compassion. Dr. Gordon, her first psychiatrist, dismisses her suffering, while Dr. Nolan, a rare female authority figure, earns her trust. Though even she betrays Esther by administering electroshock therapy without warning. John Gilling, a fellow patient and Buddy's ex-girlfriend, serves as a dark mirror to Esther. Her eventual suicide forces Esther to confront the fragility of her own progress. Through these relationships, Plath paints a portrait of a young woman stifled by societal pressures, mental illness, and the limitations placed on women in the 1950s. Esther's journey, marked by rebellion, breakdown, and tentative recovery, reveals the high cost of conformity and the precariousness of self-discovery in a world that offers few viable paths for women like her. Summary of The Bell Jar. Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar is a harrowing semi-autobiographical novel that traces the mental unraveling of Esther Greenwood, a brilliant but disillusioned 19-year-old woman in the summer of 1953. The story begins with Esther's prestigious internship at Ladies' Day magazine in New York City, a month that should have been the pinnacle of her young adulthood but instead becomes a catalyst for her psychological collapse. Plath's novel is a searing exploration of depression, identity, and the suffocating expectations placed on women in mid-century America. The illusion of success. Esther arrives in New York as one of 12 college contest winners, lodged in the Amazon Hotel and thrust into a whirlwind of fashion shows, banquets, and professional obligations. On the surface, she embodies the era's ideal of the ambitious, educated young woman. Yet, beneath this facade, Esther is already detached, observing her surroundings with a cynical eye. Her boss, JC, is a no-nonsense editor who sees potential in Esther, urging her to plan for a future in publishing. But Esther feels no passion for the work, nor for the glittering social events that come with it. Her only real companion in the city is Doreen, a rebellious, glamorous fellow intern who embodies everything Esther is not: bold, sexually liberated, and indifferent to societal expectations. Their dynamic highlights Esther's internal conflict. She is drawn to Doreen's defiance, but repelled by its consequences. One evening, after a chaotic encounter with Lanny Shepard, a smooth-talking DJ, Esther abandons Doreen in a drunken stupor outside her hotel room, symbolizing her growing withdrawal from the world around her. Cracks in the facade. Esther's detachment deepens as she drifts through New York, skipping scheduled events to wander Central Park or lie listlessly in bed. A pivotal moment comes when she and the other interns suffer severe food poisoning from tainted crab meat at a banquet. The physical illness mirrors her deteriorating mental state. She is purging herself, not just of poison, but of the expectations weighing her down. Her romantic and sexual experiences further underscore her alienation. She resents Buddy Willard, her blunt, condescending boyfriend, who represents the conventional life she fears: marriage, motherhood, and the death of her creative ambitions. In a desperate bid for control, she attempts to seduce Constantine, a sophisticated UN interpreter, but the encounter leaves her feeling hollow rather than liberated. Later, a violent date with Marco, a misogynistic man who both gifts her a diamond and assaults her, reinforces her disillusionment with men and the roles they expect her to play. By the time Esther returns home to her mother's stifling suburban house, she is already spiraling. The final blow comes when her mother informs her that she has been rejected from a prestigious writing program, a rejection that confirms her worst fears. She is not the brilliant exception she hoped to be, but just another girl with no clear path forward. The descent into darkness. Back in New England, Esther's depression manifests in terrifying ways. She stops bathing, wearing the same clothes for weeks, and loses the ability to read, write, or sleep. When her mother sends her to Dr. Gordon, a dismissive psychiatrist, she is subjected to electroshock therapy, a traumatic experience that only exacerbates her despair. Plath's depiction of the treatment is visceral, emphasizing the brutality of mid-century psychiatry and its failure to treat women with empathy. Esther's suicidal ideation becomes all-consuming. She methodically tests ways to die, slitting her wrists, attempting to hang herself, nearly drowning, before finally overdosing on sleeping pills in the crawl space of her home. Her survival is almost incidental. She wakes in a hospital, then is transferred to a grim state asylum. It is only through the intervention of Philomena Guinea, a benefactor who funds her move to a private hospital, that Esther receives human treatment. Fragile recovery. At the private institution, Esther encounters Dr. Nolan, the first authority figure who treats her with genuine understanding. Unlike Dr. Gordon, Dr. Nolan does not dismiss Esther's hatred of her mother or her fear of electroshock therapy. When the treatments resume, they are administered with care, symbolizing the possibility of healing when mental illness is met with compassion rather than coercion. Esther's interactions with Joanne, a former classmate and fellow patient, add another layer to her recovery. Joan, who once vied for Buddy Willard's affection, represents a dark mirror of Esther, another woman crushed by societal pressures. When Joan later commits suicide, Esther is forced to confront the fragility of her own progress. Buddy's visit, where he narcissistically wonders if he drives women crazy, underscores the novel's critique of patriarchal expectations. The novel's ambiguous ending finds Esther on the cusp of release, preparing for an interview that will determine whether she can return to college. Her decision to lose her virginity to Irwin, a detached academic, is less about passion than reclaiming agency over her body. Though the encounter ends in a medical emergency, it marks a step toward autonomy. The Bell Jar's Legacy. Plath's novel remains a landmark in literature for its unflinching portrayal of mental illness and female oppression. The Bell Jar itself, Esther's metaphor for the suffocating isolation of depression, resonates with anyone who has felt trapped by their own mind. The book's enduring power lies in its honesty. Esther's suffering is not romanticized, nor is her recovery neatly resolved. Ultimately, The Bell Jar is a story of survival, but not necessarily triumph. Esther's future remains uncertain as the novel closes, reflecting Plath's own unresolved struggles. Yet, in giving voice to the silent anguish of countless women, Plath crafted a work that transcends its era, offering solace and recognition to those who, like Esther, have ever felt the weight of the Bell Jar descending. So this is it for today. We will continue to discuss the history of American English literature. Please stay connected with the discourse. Thanks and regards.